How are you?
Ken.
Artie.
Arnie?
Artie.
You're Keith? Keith, man.
What month were you born?
September.
Oh.
That good?
All the best people are born in August, so you're close.
I'm all, yeah, I'm, what do you call that? When you're on the cusp or,
Of greatness?
no. No. When you're like a zodiac sign, you're on the cusp or something, or they call it something.
Yeah. Okay.
When's your birthday?
August,
I know, but August what?
23. We're almost cousins.
We're almost.
All the best men born in August.
Hi, Gail. How are you? Your mic's on mute, so I can't hear you.
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem.
Mazel tov.
Thank you.
How's everybody doing?
Good. Everyone's doing great.
Good.
How's Jake?
Good.
Good. He's going to camp for the summer, or?
Oh no. Where is he? He's home. He's home. I mean, not now, but in general, home.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll wait 2 more minutes and then we'll begin.
Okay.
What else is a good word? Maybe you could have your chavrasa join us.
What?
Maybe your chavrasa could join us for the class. Send them this.
In Lawrence.
Is it Lawrence?
He can give the class. He's very bright, very bright.
What's his name?
Glenn Schoenfeld. He's a disciple of Rabbi Foreman. You know Rabbi Foreman?
What's the name of this guy?
South Shore, of course.
Oh,
South Shore. That's who he gets all his teachings from.
Okay, so part of the Zoom, I set up these digital polls. So I'm just going to ask you. I'm going to read you the polls, and you'll just tell me the answer.
Oh,
Everyone else is going to do it online. Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Today's class is dedicated to Maimonides, one of the most famous Jewish people of all time. And he was born in 1135 and passed away approximately 1204. He was born in Cordova, Spain. And that's why he called himself the Sephardi. Sephardi is Spain. Spain is how you say Sephardi means Spain. And passed away in Cairo, Egypt. And on his gravestone in Tiberias in Israel, it says, right over here, highlighted, Mi Moshe ad Moshe lo kam k'Moshe. From Moshe until Moshe, from Moshe Rabbeinu, the first Moses, the original Moses, until Moshe Maimonides, no one arose like Moshe.
well, Maimonides wasn't a thing. Was it Moshe something?
So the question is, why? So before we get into that, before we jump into that, this statement is not made about any other rabbis. There have been great prophets and high priests and Jewish judges and Jewish scholars, and no one gets the title like this. Now you could say, well, it was written by some fans, and fans write whatever they want. So just because they say it doesn't mean that everyone has to agree with it. But for the most part, everyone did agree with it, at least in the later generation. During his generation, very controversial figure in the Jewish community. But after his lifetime, it became unanimous that from Moshe until Moshe, no one arose like Moshe. So he's famous. There are schools named after him. There are hospitals named after him. There are stamps and currencies, all Maimonides. He's really a famous figure. And the question is, so it's definitely worth studying. Now, why did we choose today? The reason we chose today is because many Jews study Maimonides' work and they try to finish it. And then Maimonides' work is 1,000 chapters long. And when you finish it, it's a big deal. And tonight is the night that we start all over again from chapter 1. So that's why we're choosing tonight as the night to learn about Maimonides, learn about his works, and learn about the study cycle as well, how it works and how it came to be. So before we start the biographical sketch of Rambam, I'm going to put up this poll, and I invite everyone to vote, take a vote in the poll. And the first question in the poll is, did you ever have a chance to read or study a part of any of the following of Maimonides' works? And the options are Mishnah Torah, which is his code of Jewish law. His second work, Guide for the Perplexed. Oh, we have one vote, Guide for the Perplexed. And I know you had Mishnah Torah. Okay. Sefer Mitzvot, his book of Mitzvot. His commentary on the Mishnah. Any of his numerous letters, or any of his medical writings. You read from his medical writings?
Well, no, in his letters, it was in his biography. Some of his letters, it was in his biography.
Oh, you read a biography of him. With who published that biography? Yes. Okay. I'm waiting for some votes to come in. Is anyone voting? Any of my online friends? I guess I should have left an option none. I didn't do any. Okay. So let's go to the second question. Which of the following words come to mind first when you hear of Maimonides? Law, philosophy, reason, medicine, mitzvot, Talmud, or faith?
Medicine.
Medicine.
So you said philosophy.
Philosophy.
Law.
Law. Okay. And the final question, he is known as Maimonides because, you're listening? Option number 1, he was from the Moroccan city of Maimon. Option number 2, his dad's name was Maimon. Option number 3, Maimonides is Greek for the Great One. And option number 4, he authored a work on the Talmud by that name. Option number 4?
I think he's from Maimon.
You think he's from the city of Maimon?
Well,
He authored a work called Maimonides. Okay. We have a vote here that says he's most famous for medicine. That's what you said, right? And someone voted that they read some of Guide for the Perplexed or Sefer Mitzvah. Beautiful. Okay. So we're gonna spend 10 more seconds on the poll, and then we're gonna end the polling. And what we're going to do right after this poll is we're going to watch a biography video, a short version of the biography of Maimonides' life. Okay, thank you everyone for taking some time to vote. Okay.
In the spring of 1138, Jews in the southern Spanish city of Cordoba were preparing for Passover, the festival of deliverance. But the household of the esteemed rabbinical judge of Cordoba, Rabbi Maimon, was celebrating a delivery of another kind. Just one day shy of Passover, the rabbi and his wife welcomed their eldest son, whom they named Moshe, Hebrew for Moses. Little did the rabbi know that he was destined to gain eternal fame through Moshe, for his brilliant child grew into the universally acclaimed scholar known as Moses Maimonides, or Moshe, the son of Maimon. It was a trying time for the Jews of Spain. The Almohads, a fanatical Islamic movement bent on establishing a caliphate, were gradually overrunning the Iberian Peninsula. Countless Jews were murdered. Others were forced to convert, while many families fled Spain. Maimonides was 10 years of age when his family was forced to flee. They settled in Fez, Morocco, where his brilliant father shaped him into a Talmudic scholar of repute.
He also mastered what we call chokhmah, which is the universal wisdom of humankind. He knew the works of Aristotle and Plato and their Islamic interpreters and so on.
Maimonides also became an expert in astronomy and medicine. In 1165, the family journeyed to the land of Israel, but unable to settle, they continued to the large Jewish community of Cairo, where Maimonides married and settled down. He then devoted a complete decade, approximately from 1168 to 1177, to producing his crowning literary achievement, the Mishnah Torah.
He was an Ish Halacha. He was the greatest rabbi of the Middle Ages. He wrote the greatest law code in all of Jewish history, the Mishnah Torah. He was an absolutely outstanding master halachist.
For the first time since God gave the Torah at Sinai, the entire body of Jewish law would be codified in a systemic, clear, and concise fashion. The 14-volume masterpiece created a powerful impression across the Jewish world. Then, in 1177, tragedy struck. Maimonides' brother, David, drowned when his ship, fully laden with merchandise, sunk in the Indian Ocean. The brothers had shared a deep bond, and Maimonides grieved terribly for years. David had also been Maimonides' business partner, and this calamity meant financial ruination for Maimonides, who was now forced to become a doctor. His expertise soon caught the attention of the Egyptian ruler, Sultan Saladin, who appointed Maimonides to the position of royal physician. Maimonides also served as the leader of Egyptian Jewry. He juggled his time between his royal duties, treating private patients, serving as a statesman for the Jewish community, teaching Torah, and discussing medicine, philosophy, and science with his non-Jewish audiences. Maimonides described his schedule in a letter to a dear student, Rabbi Samuel ibn Taban of Provence.
I live in Fastad, and the Sultan lives in Cairo. I must see him every morning to check on his health. As a rule, I am in Cairo early each day, and even if nothing unusual happens, by the time I get back to Fastad, half the day is gone. When I come home, my foyer is always full of people, Jews and non-Jews, important people and not, judges and policemen. I apologize and ask that they should be kind enough to give me a few minutes to eat. That is the only meal I take in 24 hours. Patients go in and out until nightfall. And sometimes, I swear to you by the Torah, it is 2 hours into the night before they are all gone. I talk to them and prescribe for them, even while lying down on my back from exhaustion. On Shabbat, the whole congregation, or at least the majority of it, comes to my house after morning services, and I instruct the members of the community as to what they should do during the entire week. We learn together in a week fashion until the afternoon. This is my schedule.
His quill hardly saw any rest either. Jewish communities from distant lands sought his advice and rulings on Jewish law, and Maimonides felt compelled to pen yet another literary masterpiece to forestall a developing crisis in Jewish faith. Many Jewish scholars in the Arabic lands had been swept up in the newfound Islamic obsession with Greek philosophy. This left some Jewish scholars deeply disturbed by the apparent intellectual contradictions between contemporary Greco-Islamic philosophy and various precepts of the Torah. In 1191, Maimonides published a treatise that thoroughly addressed these issues from a philosophical standpoint under the title Guide for the Perplexed. When Maimonides passed away in 1204, the entire Jewish world mourned his passing. An epitaph without historical parallel was carved into his gravestone, proclaiming that since the days of Moses, no Jewish leader's achievements had rivaled that of Moses Maimonides.
Okay, so that was a short summary of Maimonides' life. And one of the things we learned from here is he got the name Maimonides because his father's name was Maimon. So that's why it's called Maimonides. And the technical reason why he got that name is because there was another famous Rabbi Moshe that lived during the end of his life, who was the son of Nachman. That was Nachmanides. But to differentiate between the two Reb Moshes, one became Maimonides and one became Nachmanides. So that's the technical. In yeshivas around the world, he's called Rambam. Rambam is Reb Moshe ben Maimon. It's the acronym.
Is the other one Ramban?
The other one is Ramban, exactly. Reb Moshe ben Nachman, exactly. Until I was maybe 12, if you told me Maimonides, I would not have no clue who Maimonides was. If you told me Rambam, of course I knew who Rambam was. Okay. So now we're going to do a deep dive by looking into some of his famous works. We learned a little bit about his life. We learned how he spent 10 years writing a work. He spent many years. First, he was born in Spain. He had to run away from the Almaid, eventually ends up in Egypt. He wants to dedicate his life to study, but because of the tragedy of his brother's passing, he needs to work. He becomes a physician. So he has to do physician, philosopher, counselor, rabbi to the whole city. So he eats one meal a day after traveling back from Cairo back to Fostat, where he lived. And then he's just counseling people the whole day. And then when he died, I was surprised he didn't mention this in the video, but he was buried in Tiberias. And tradition says, how did he end up there? Is they knew that he wanted to be buried in Israel. So they put his coffin on a camel, and they said, wherever the camel's going to go, that's where we'll be buried. They assumed he's going to go somewhere in Egypt. But the camel started walking and walking, and so the group followed, and the camel walked all the way to Israel. And they're waiting, is it going to stop here? Is it going to stop there? Finally, it stopped in Tiberias, and that's where it's buried today. The famous, there's like a architectural structure, very pretty, that they put around it, very famous with 14 pillars. So let's begin to learn some of his works. So the last famous work that he wrote was called Guide to the Perplexed. He wrote it to try to synthesize, the very popular philosophies that were coming onto the scene, certain fundamental principles from Aristotle and Plato, and that the Muslims popularized, the Muslim Greek tradition, and a lot of Jews were getting swept up in the enlightenment of this philosophy, and they saw some contradictions with Jewish tradition. And so he wrote this work to kind of synthesize and say, you don't have to abandon Judaism to feel comfortable in this setting. You could still retain be a practicing Jew and not feel like you're not enlightened. And so it's a synthesis. Some question whether he intended it as, he really believed everything he was writing there as the ideal, or he was just writing for those that won't be able to abandon the philosophy. At least here's like a bridge gap between the two. That was this book called Guide to the Perplexed. and one of his most controversial works, especially by the French rabbis. The French rabbis could not stand this work because in this work, he tries to give reasons and explanations that make rational many things in the Torah. And the French rabbis were concerned that when you try to give rational, then people say, okay, so I do things that make sense. Things that don't make sense, I don't have to keep. Or things that made sense for its time don't apply today. So if the reason for sacrifices was only, to allay, all cultures had sacrifices. So God gave like a kosher way for Jews to offer sacrifices. But if I don't need this, if I don't feel any urge to offer sacrifices, so there's no mitzvah for me to offer sacrifice. You see the concern when you give a reason? When you give a reason, if the reason doesn't apply, so then you feel that the mitzvah doesn't apply either. So the French rabbis were very fearful of this, and therefore they disagreed. But that was his last big work. His earliest work was called Commentary on the Mishnah. His commentary on Mishnah is a commentary on all 6 orders of the Mishnah. And one of the famous parts of this commentary is he spends a lot of time to outline the 13 fundamental principles of our Jewish faith. And Adon Olam is a summary of the 13 principles of faith. Some synagogues sing Yigdal Elokim Chai, which is the 13 principles. Many girls say that they're Bar Mitzvah. It's found in this work, Commentary on the Mishnah, as an introduction to a certain chapter in Sanhedrin, one of the tractates in the Mishnah. This is just a small part of this commentary, is this introduction. So he writes the 13 fundamental principles of faith, saying, if you're Jewish and you believe that the sky is green and not blue, it doesn't mean you're not Jewish. Maybe it's a flaw in your knowledge, but it's just because you have a mistake doesn't mean that you're abandoning the religion. So there are many things in Judaism that if you get it wrong, it's okay. But these 13 fundamental principles, if you don't believe in one of these principles, then Maimonides says, you're not keeping Judaism anymore. You're keeping something else. So, for example, the belief that Moshe was a prophet who spoke the word of God, that's one of the 13 principles. If you think Moses made up his teaching, then you're not believing in Judaism. You're believing in something else. And the arrival that there will be in Mashiach will come and, take us to redeem us.
On 7 is one, it's like 136.
That there's reward and punishment, that when we do good, Okay, so now let's move on from Mishnah Torah.
Right on 7,
He
behind the
completed this work at the age of 30.
Yes, nice.
Completed this work at the age of 30. Now, his magnum opus, his greatest achievement, is the Mishnah Torah. That's right here. Mishnah Torah. And that's where we're going to spend a lot of time studying the Mishnah Torah, why he made this work.
What was the first one?
The first one was Guide to the Perplexed.
Okay.
The second one was his commentary on Mishnah. It's spelled the same, Mishnah, and Mishnah, but it's totally different words in Hebrew. Mishnah means repetitious teaching, because Mishnah was the oral tradition that was repeated, and Mishnah Torah means the second to the Torah. As we'll learn in his introduction, he said, you read the written Torah and you read my work and you're covered. You know all there is to know in Jewish law. You don't need anything else. Written law, my work, and you're covered. So he called it Mishnah Torah for that statement. He was also became very controversial with audacity, But we'll get into that in a moment. So first, let's learn a little bit about. So let's learn a little bit about Mishnah Torah and how it came about. So let's read First of all, something about it. So it took him 10 years to write it. 10 years of total dedication, right? Sometimes an author gets on the radio and says, I spent the past 15 years of my life writing this. You don't know, is that a big deal? Like, like how much of the 10 years did he spend? But here he dedicated 10 years of his life fully to this work. And this work was completed around the year 1180. And out of all his works, this was the only work that he wrote in Hebrew. The other works were written in Arabic and translated. He had an official translator who translated his works into Hebrew. Okay, so let's go through the history. So he writes an introduction to this work, and what we're going to read now, you can find it in the text here, but we have it on screen, and we'll ask Dr. Steve Ender. You can read for us text 1.
All right, got it off mute. The mitzvot given to Moses at Mount Sinai were all given together with explanations. Moses, our teacher, personally transcribed the entire Torah before he died. He did not, however, transcribe the explanation of the Torah. Instead, he commanded it verbally to the elders, to Joshua, and to the totality of Israel. As it says, be careful to observe everything that I prescribe to you. For this reason, it's called the oral law.
Okay, so Maimonides, Rambam highlights here that everything I write here is not a new invention of the rabbis, that a new code of law that has nothing to do with Moses recognized when I'm writing in this book. And he says the answer is yes, absolutely. When God gave Moses the written Torah, he also gave him an explanation. And in fact, the written Torah is almost impossible to decode on its own without an explanation. And the explanation is the oral Torah. And there are many hints in the Torah where we see that the Torah itself asserts that there's something outside of the written which you need to know. For example, in one of the works, in one of the places, God says, and you should slaughter the animals as I have prescribed for you. And you look through all the other pages and you don't see a prescription there. Because obviously that was part of the oral tradition of how exactly the kosher way to slaughter. Okay, another thing to notice is he says here that this is the oral tradition is an explanations of the mitzvahs given by God. But there's also another part of the oral law that he goes on to explain. Maimonides himself goes to say that there are certain things that even Moses, God didn't tell him what to do in every situation in the future. What are you going to do when there's microwaves? Can you use a microwave on Shabbat? God didn't tell Moses that. What God gave to Moses was a set of principles called rules of exegesis. Fancy word that I checked up on Google how to pronounce it. And he said, you use these rules to deduce based on the teachings that I already gave you. If you follow these 13 principles and the Sanhedrin ratifies it, then it's considered legitimate as any other part of Torah, because you're using the rules that I gave you based on the system. So sometimes and that's the 13 principles that we read in the morning prayers before the services start. There's like a section, 13 principles. Fine. So that's the oral tradition. The oral tradition are things that God told directly to Moses, or are derived from the principles taught to us by Moses. Fine. So now these traditions were passed on generation to generation for over 40 years. But what happened? So let's take a look.
The 5 books of Moses, known as the written Torah, was accompanied by an oral tradition passed down from teacher to pupil for over 1,000 years. During this time, these ideas were not formally committed to writing, and in fact, it was prohibited to do so. The intention was for students to learn directly from teachers and to accept personal responsibility for preserving the teachings for the next generation. Yet toward the end of the 2nd century, the oral Torah was recorded in a book known as the Mishnah. Why did this happen? And who had the audacity to change the status quo? Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi was head of the Sanhedrin. His piety, Torah scholarship, and wisdom earned him the name Rabbeinu HaKadosh, our holy teacher. It was he who made the momentous decision to record the oral law. The situation of the Jews was precarious. The might of the Roman Empire had spread its tentacles and ruled over the Jewish people in Israel. Around 100 years previously, the Romans had destroyed the Second Temple. Countless Jews were killed, forced into exile, and sold into slavery. Similar atrocities occurred a few decades later, when the Romans crushed the Bar Kokhba rebellion. At certain points, the study of Torah was forbidden on pain of death. Religious practices were banned, and Torah sages were murdered. An oral method of transmission has advantages, but it can only flourish when people are living together in peace with a strong presence of scholars and teachers. However, under the circumstances of oppression and dispersion that existed at the time, an oral means of transmission was not advantageous, as it jeopardized the accurate preservation of these treasured teachings. Considering these realities, Rabbi Yehuda made the bold decision to record the oral Torah. Indeed, over the next 2,000 years, the Jewish people often experienced great suffering, dispersions, and weakening of scholarship. Were it not for Rabbi Yehuda's revolutionary vision in writing down the Mishnah, many sacred teachings and practices would have been lost forever.
So the Mishnah Torah, the Mishnah was written by Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. He took the oral tradition and wrote it down, but he didn't write it down in a elaborate way. In other words, till that point, everyone was learning it by memory. So people still knew it. They were just getting a little confused. Certain fragments were made. So he wrote a memory aid to the oral tradition. Now, if you learn the Mishnah without knowing anything about Judaism, you're not going to learn Judaism from the Mishnah, because the Mishnah doesn't set out to teach you Judaism. It sets out to serve as a memory aid for those who know the oral tradition already, but things are getting lost. There's details are being forgotten. So he wrote it in a way that is not conducive to learning, but is conducive for memory. So, for example, he'll blend unrelated laws, because that's a good way to memorize things. For example, the opening Mishnah of the Mishnayot starts off, when do we read the evening Shema? The Torah tells us, the Mishnah doesn't say this, but you should already know that the Torah has a mitzvah to say the Shema in the evening and the morning. The Mishnah assumes you know that already. He says, we assume you know that Shema should be recited in the morning and the evening. When in the evening should you recite the Shema? When should you do it? From the time that the Kohanim go to eat their truma. So now for learning information, it's not the most helpful, but for memory aid, it's perfect. In one sentence, you just remember 20 concepts. You remember that there's a mitzvah of Shema. You remember that it's recited in the evening. You remember that there's a concept of teruma, eaten by the Kohen at a certain time. But what happens a few generations later when the oral tradition gets lost more and more? So that is essentially the Talmud. The Talmud came a few generations later and tried to fill in all the background for you. Hold on, what's the source that there's a mitzvah to say the Shema? Prove it to me that there's such a mitzvah. When was it that the Kohanim eat the truma? Fill in all the gaps of the teaching. So let's read text 2, if we can get a volunteer from our Zoom community. Amy, text 2. Yeah, you're on mute. Should I unmute you?
Okay, now we're right here, Rabbi Ashi.
Yeah.
Rav Ashi composed the Babylonian Talmud. It's kind of blocked for me.
What's blocked?
The right side of the text is blocked by pictures of everybody.
Oh,
I don't know how to move it over.
okay.
Aglalas in Babylonia, approximately 100 years after Rabbi Yoham
Yeah.
composed the Jerusalem Talmud. The intent of both, I'm missing that word,
Is to elucidate
the words of the Mishnah to explain its
deeper
points and to relate the new teachings that were developed by each court from the era of Rabbi Huda until composition of the Talmud.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So he basically, Rav Ashi, 400 years after the Mishnah, which Mishnah was written in Israel, but by then already the largest Jewish community was in Babylonia. And that's where he wrote the Babylonian Talmud, explaining the deeper points of the Mishnah and also related new teachings that were developed since then, and also new institutions. Sometimes, rabbis come up with new institutions. They never claim that it's a mitzvah from the Torah, but they say, we think people are being lax in this area. We think as a precaution or as a technique, this is a way to solve an issue. So for example, Jews cannot have chametz in their home on Passover, no leaven. Well, in the times of the Jews in the desert, you had your tent. It wasn't a big deal to get rid of leaven. But if you're a beer producer, now to get rid of your leaven is a big financial pain. So they come up with a structure. Oh, you could sell. This is the kosher way to sell your business, that the profits over Passover go to somebody else, and then after Passover you buy it back. So these are innovations based on mitzvahs that were developed by the sages. So that's also in the Talmud. Okay, so now where does Maimonides come on the scene? What was Maimonides needed for? He writes here in text 3 why he had to come up with a new work. Gail, you want to read first text 3?
The Talmud style is quite complex, and it is composed in Aramaic with a mixture of other languages. This language was understood at the time by the people living in Babylonia. In other places, however, and even in Babylonia itself today, this language is not comprehensible unless one studied it. There are only a select few who comprehend the Jerusalem and Babylonian Talmud and the other works of Midrash. They require a breadth of knowledge, a spirit of wisdom, and much time in order to truly learn from them the many laws of the Torah.
He says, you're a Jew, you want to learn how to keep the Torah, and to study, you could technically go learn the Mishnah and the Talmud and have all Jewish laws, but sometimes it's not organized by topic. It's organized as a system of memory study. So it has nothing to do with, it's not indexed. So you have no clue, are you seeing, just because you learn in one place a law, let's say you want to know how to make your kitchen kosher. Well, the topic of how to know to make your kitchen kosher can be spread out over many tractates throughout the Talmud. And sometimes the language is not clear. Sometimes how to apply it to your scenario is not clear. So for all these reasons, he says, and there's a lot of debates in the Talmud. And sometimes you're like, hold on, where did we end? Which way was it decided on? Did we follow this guy or do we follow that guy? Now there are rules of how we do it, but you need a tremendous knowledge to do it. So there were rabbis that tried to make it easier. For example, one rabbi, he decided he's going to make a version of the Talmud, cutting out all the discussion, only quoting the conclusions, and only the conclusions on the side of the halakha, on the side of the final law. But even then, it's not organized by topic. And so even studying his work, you have to look in this, you have to learn the entire work in order to know what you're doing. The Maimonides says, this is not ideal. It's in Aramaic, the language. I'm going to solve it. I'm going to solve it. Does he write it in this text? Yeah, text 4. We're going to get one of our in-house volunteers. Yeah. Yeah.
Therefore, with
Text
a deep trust in God, I girded my loins. I, Moses, the son of Maimon of Spain, I contemplated all these texts and sought to compose a work that will summarize their conclusions regarding all matters of Torah law in clear and concise terms. In this way, the entire law will be organized everyone without complication, to those of lesser stature and those of greater stature. Therefore, I have called the text Mishnah Torah, meaning second to the Torah, for a person to study the written Torah and then this text and thereby comprehend the entire Torah without having to study any other text.
Okay. So now you see what was so revolutionary by Maimonides in the halachic work. Of course, he's famous for his philosophy and for medicine, but in the halachic realm, he's unique. No other work in Jewish history, not before, not after, has the entire Jewish law in one. And he wrote just the concise conclusions. You study, it's 1,000 chapters. You go through it, you know the entire Torah. In the law part of the Torah. It's a very powerful thing. There are many other codes of Jewish law that were written later. When he did it, it was controversial because people were like, hold on, are you saying that we don't have to learn the Talmud? The Talmud is not important. It was also controversial because he didn't write the sources. And that was something he's like, I didn't have time to write the sources, but you're right, I'm going to write a book of the sources, but he never got around to it. So, like, there was all genre of people who try to examine what were his sources for every teaching that he wrote in there. Where in the Talmud do you find it? That's all, like, tons of books just dedicated to that. But there are many codes of Jewish law that exist that were written after, but they only wrote the laws that are relevant to Jew and diaspora. Half of the mitzvahs are not relevant to diaspora Jews. There are a lot of laws that have to do with ritual impurity. That's not relevant if you live in diaspora. The laws about the Holy Temple, laws about sacrifices, laws, agriculture laws that were kept during the Jubilee years. Things that we don't relate to, but will be relevant when Mashiach comes. Maimonides has it, but no other codes of Jewish law have it. So this work is completely unique. So now let's learn a little bit about the actual work, the text. So here, what we have here is the document of this introduction that we just read through, some text from his introduction. So here it is, handwritten by a man named, what was this fellow's name? Okay, I can't find it now, but let's see if I could get to it soon. Either way, it was handwritten, and now this copy, it's a handwritten copy, can be found in the Oxford Library in England. They don't have the complete, all 14 volumes. They only have the first 2 of the 14 books in the series, isn't that? But I believe some of the other volumes are in other libraries of this work. What's unique about this work, it wasn't written by Maimonides himself, but it was written in Maimonides' lifetime, okay? let's look at this other work that was written in the 1200s. So just after Maimonides' lifetime, now it's already a lot more elaborate and ornate and pretty. So this is from, this is part of the Kaufman collection. But back to that Huntington collection, Maimonides himself, and this is the bottom line over here, Maimonides wrote that this book, the scribe wrote it. Many people, how were books written in those days? Everything had to be handwritten, 1,000 chapters handwritten. Inevitably, there's going to be mistakes in it. So people would have to come. So this writer came to Maimonides, said, can you check, can I compare my work against the original that you had? And then Maimonides autographed it at the end. And that's this last line that he writes. Maimonides writes here, Huga Misifri, checked, inspected from my library, from my work, Ani Moshe ben Maimon, I am Moses, son of Maimon. So that's something fascinating. Now, how do we have that copy? The way we have that copy is because this work was now autographed by Maimonides. Actually, I skipped something important here. Maimonides himself wrote a first edition, and then over his lifetime polished it and wrote a second edition. The Jews in Teman, in Yemen, they had Maimonides' first edition, and they followed Maimonides to the exclusion of all other scholars that came after. And they followed it based on his first edition. So the customs they had differed from many of the scholars that came later. Even if scholars said, I'm being loyal to Maimonides, sometimes it's different based on which edition. The Yemen version is considered very accurate because it was very accurate, and versus the copies that the Jews from France and Germany and those Jews had, those rabbis were very comfortable adding commentary into the text, their own understanding, or feeling, this doesn't make so much sense, let me change a word. So those weren't, but this text that we have here from the Huntington collection in Oxford was checked over by Maimonides from his second edition. So in a sense, it's considered the best copy available. And how did we get it? So there was this man, Elazar, son of Perachia, and he lived in the 1500s, or in the 1400s, and he got somehow a hold of this collection that was checked over, and he donated it to the Beth Din in Egypt. And he said, whoever has a question about what exact word of Maimonides, they can put a bond and use this copy to see if they have the right edition. And it stayed there for a minute. It stayed there until the 1670s, when this Mr. Huntington was visiting Egypt and the Holy Land. And he collected many different documents. And he brought this to England, and eventually it ended up in the Oxford Library. So that's how we have this edition. It's quite a fascinating story. For anyone who has a spare $200,000, you could buy from one of the first printed editions. There's many Jewish works. As soon as the printing press came on the scene in the 1400s, many Jewish works were from the first things to be printed. And there's a famous family, the Sanchino family, that they printed a Talmud, and they printed a Rambam. And this is a collection of Rambam. This picture that we have on the screen is from one of the original first edition. You could buy that book, at least one of the volumes, for just $200,000. So it's available. Here's the Sotheby's listing for it. Okay. So that's the story of this. Now, if I'm going to give you a Torah scroll, and I'm going to tell you, open the Torah scroll Tell me how many mitzvot are in the Torah? How many mitzvot are in the Torah? So we all know there's 613 mitzvahs. How do we know that? Says, this is text 6, and I'm going to read it. This is from the Talmud. Rabbi Simlai taught there were 613 mitzvot stated to Moses, consisting of 365 prohibitions corresponding to the number of days in the solar year, and 248 positive mitzvot corresponding to the number of a person's limbs. Now, doctors, don't call me out on whether there's actually 248 limbs, but that's 613 mitzvahs total. 365 prohibition, 248 positive mitzvahs. Rav Hamnuna says, this is a continuation from this Talmud in Makkah. What is the verse that alludes to this? How do we know there's 613? Because it is written, Torah tziva lanu Moshe. Moses commanded us the Torah. Yemirasha Kelas Yaakov, an inheritance to the congregation of Jacob. The word Torah in its numerical value is 611. If you take the letters of Torah, and we're going to spell it out in the chart soon in the next slide, is 611. 2 commandments were heard from God at Sinai. The first 2 of the 10 commandments, God said it. Everyone was having heart attacks. They're like, Moses, you take over. So in the end, only 611 did we not hear that we heard through Moses. 2 we heard directly from God. And so here's the math on the screen. The letter Taf equals 400, the Vav equals 6, the Resh equals 200, and the Hey equals 5. That's 611. Plus the 2 that God told us. So 600, Torah, Tziva and Moshe. Moshe gave us 611, and God gave us the other 2. Total of 613. Now, let's look at this verse over here, and you'll see why it gets so difficult to find 613 mitzvahs in the Torah. So I have over here on the screen, the children of Israel shall encamp, each man by his division with the flagstaffs of their father's house. Some distance from the tent of meeting, they shall encamp. In other words, God gives a mitzvah to the Jewish people how they should encamp in the desert. Is this one of the 613 mitzvahs? How do you know? Here's another statement. Speak to the entire congregation of the children of Israel and say to them, you shall be holy. Is that a mitzvah? You should be holy is a mitzvah. What is the mitzvah? How do you keep this mitzvah of being holy? Is it a declaration or is it a mitzvah? Let's use another example. You shall bring a guilt offering. If you're rich, you bring a bull. If you're poor, you bring a bird. If you're really poor, you bring a flour offering. Is that 3 mitzvot or 1 mitzvah? What?
1.
1? Now, let's say you shall take fine flour and bake it into 12 loaves. A few verses later, place them in 2 stacks, 6 in each stack, upon the pure table in the tabernacle. So is that separate mitzvahs? Bake the bread, bring it into the temple, 6 on. Is it a few separate, or is all the different ones 1 mitzvah? So Maimonides said, as an introduction to my work, Mishnah Torah, I really have to write a work first called Sefer Mitzvot, where I'm going to make 14 principles that he sets out of how do you know which mitzvah is considered one of the 613. He sets up principles, and all these examples is like you guessed. So for example, the first one, if it's a mitzvah that was temporary, it's not one of the 613. Only mitzvahs that will be for generations forever. If it's a mitzvah that declarative, be holy, not a mitzvah, at least according to Maimonides. The many stages in one mitzvah, it's 1 mitzvah. The 4 species of shake on Sukkot, lulav, etrog, it's not 4 separate, it's 1 mitzvah. See, he wrote a work first called Sefer Mitzvot, where he goes on to enumerate what the 613 mitzvahs are. He sets things that are controversial, he tries to prove that it is that way. And this turned into a whole other genre of Jewish books of people saying your principles are wrong. There's a different 613 category. Practically, for the most part, there's not so much practical difference. In a few cases, there is practical difference if it made it onto the list or not. But that's just interesting. He wrote that work first as an introductory work, and then when he started his legal code, each section of the legal code starts off with an introduction. For example, so what he did in his legal code was organized by topic. You want to know all the laws of Yom Kippur? You just turn to the chapter the section that speaks about Yom Kippur. It's 83 sections total. In other words, he said that all the Torah can be categorized into 83 sections. There's a section for Yom Kippur, a section for Passover, a section for Shabbat, a section for getting married, a section for learning what's kosher, 83 sections. When he starts off a section, he says, this is the section of Yom Kippur. There are 4 mitzvahs, 2 positive mitzvahs connected to Yom Kippur and 2 negative ones. The positive one is to rest from work on Yom Kippur. That's a positive, rest. But there's the negative, don't do any work. There's the positive to fast, and the negative not to eat. That's the 4 mitzvahs of Yom Kippur. And then he goes on to go through, in detail, okay, there's so much more to Yom Kippur, but these are the main mitzvahs that are connected to Yom Kippur. So sometimes you have chapters and chapters that are connected to one mitzvah, and another place of your Rambam, you'll have one chapter that has 20 mitzvahs. Because sometimes you have many mitzvahs that are really simple, so you only need one chapter, and other times you'll have numerous chapters just explain the details of one mitzvah. So that's this master work. Okay, so now we go on to why so many Jews study Maimonides each year. You'll say, well, it's a great work to study because then you know all the Jewish law. The problem is that most Jews today do not follow Maimonides as the final authority on Jewish law, especially Ashkenaz and even Sephardic Jews. Most Jews today do not follow Maimonides as the final authority on Jewish law. He's a good starting point, but he's not the final authority on Jewish law. So, but he's the only work that includes the entirety of Jewish law. So if you want to know the entirety of Torah, it's important. And so the Rebbe in 1984, the Lubavitcher Rebbe started this cycle. He said there's 1,000 chapters. So if you learn 3 chapters a day, you could finish the entire Maimonides in a single year. Well, learning 3 chapters a day, it takes you approximately an hour and 15 minutes to do. Not everyone has an hour and 15 minutes to dedicate. They said, okay, for those that need, there's a second cycle. You could do 1 chapter a day and finish it in 3 years. But some people don't even have a half hour to study. And it's a heavy work. It's legal, but not everyone's legally minded. He said, there's also Sefer HaMitzvah, which is this work which enumerates the 613 mitzvah. Now, when he wrote his 613 mitzvah, he first lists all his positive mitzvah, and then he lists all the negative. So it's not exactly mirroring his Mishnah Torah, because Mishnah Torah is organized by topic, not by mitzvah. But the Rebbe set up here, the people that are studying Sefer Mitzvah, you learn whatever they're learning in the 3-chapter cycle, 3-chapter a day cycle, whichever mitzvahs they're learning that day, you learn it in those mitzvahs as listed in the Mishnah Torah. And the Mishnah Torah lists the mitzvah and a short description of the mitzvah. So that's like the short version of doing this mitzvah. And the Rebbe went on to explain why. So he says, we need positive ways to unify. And there's nothing that positively unifies Jews like studying Torah. Studying Torah has a powerful unifying effect. If you want to figure out, the Rebbe said, if you have a friendship, you want to deepen the friendship, study Torah together. If you have a boss and a worker that have tension between each other, let them study Torah together, because on the Torah level, it's very easy to unite. And the practical level, everyone has different personalities. There's always conflicts and personalities, but in Torah is a great way to bond with other people. So the Rebbe says one of the ways to achieve this unity is when all Jews unite through studying one area of Torah. While there are mystical explanations for how doing so achieves unity, it's also quite practical. When many people study one subject, they can discuss and analyze the matter together. Although they may differ in how they understand the subject, their discussion will nonetheless lead to affection and friendship. So the fact that everyone's on the same page, learning the same thing at the same time, has a great unifying effect. He says, okay, but why do we choose Mishnah Torah? Let's choose some other work. This is because this is very practical laws. It's not philosophy. It's not other areas of Torah. Different people have different ways of thinking. So some people are philosophical, some people are mystical. Everyone has their inclination, which parts of Torah they gravitate to. But the legal part of Torah, not the legal theory, just the do's and the don'ts, the practical part of Torah, that's something that's very easy to unite upon because it's relevant to everyone. So that's why he suggested this cycle. Now, once we finish the cycle, we can say, okay, now it's time to start over again. That's what Jews do. They learn, and then they right back to the beginning. That's the whole Simchat Torah. So the Rebbe said, when you achieve something so special, you have to celebrate it. And the Rebbe was not the innovator of making a siyum. We all know the big Talmud, the Daf Yomi siyum that they had this past year. They finished the Talmud in 7 years. They took over Madison Square Garden and MetLife Stadium. They took over a few places. And they did in England. It's a beautiful thing when so many Jews get together. But there's some fascinating things about the Rambam Siyum. So where does this come from? It comes from the Talmud. In the Talmud, Abaye said, "May I receive my reward?" This is text 8a. "May I receive my reward because when I see a young Torah scholar who has completed a tractate, I make a celebratory feast for the sages." He started the custom that you finish something in the Torah, you make a party. And that's the source for this, that whatever you sell, you celebrate it this way.
But the feast is for the sages, not the person who did it. You're celebrating the sages who wrote this book.
Right. Or you're both.
Yeah, right. Both.
Now, the Reb Shlomo Loria writes like this: the joy is a mitzvah. Who's supposed to be happy at the celebration? So he writes, this is text 8b. This joy is a mitzvah not only for the one who concluded the book, but for others as well. This is proven by the fact that Abai would make a celebration when someone else concluded a tractate, and he would invite many sages to attend. The fact that some Jews somewhere finished is a celebration by all Jews. Okay, so now what's something interesting, remember the Rebbe started this in 1984. So someone had the idea, wouldn't it be amazing if Jews made a siyum, this concluding celebration, in Maimonides' home in Egypt? But 1985 in Egypt is not so easy for Jews to go there, especially Orthodox Jews. Let's watch this interesting video. Here's a picture of the celebration. So it did happen. But we're going to watch a short video, a little bit about how this celebration came to be.
הפכתי במידה מסוימת לשליח להעברת מסרים לקציני צבא בכירים, לאישי...
Okay. we pause it? Yes, we pause it. Hold on, let's move this here.
It was going before. There he goes.
הפכתי במידה מסוימת לשליח להעברת מסרים לקציני צבא בכירים, לאישי ממשל בכירים בישראל, אבל גם למדתי רבות והודרכתי בדרך כיצד לבטא דברים בתחומים שבהם עסקתי, תחום הביטחוני בעיקר, תחום האחר במדינת ישראל, כאשר ראיתי ברבי אדם שלא רק הוא משכמו ומעלה, לא רק שהוא אדם שבקיא בכל המחמנים ואין לי בכלל מה להיכנס ולומר את הדברים האלה, אבל בתחום הספציפי שלי, הייתה לרבי ראייה רחבת טווח, גם ברוחב היריעה, גם לעומק העניינים, וגם הרבה פעמים, כל הפעמים, קדימה ולטווח ארוך. לא פעם כשפגשתי קצינים בכירים, הם אמרו לי, האיש מדהים אותנו. אנחנו לא אנשים דתיים, אבל אנחנו באים אליו, ויש לנו את התחושה שיושב מולנו, איש צבא שעבר כל שנותיו ביחידות, שמכיר את מחשבת המלחמה, שמכיר כלי נשק, שמכיר מהלכים צבאיים, שמבין במודיעין, ורוחב היריעה שלו היה עצום בניתוח של הדברים, וזה גם מה שהביא אליו לא מעט קצינים בכירים. הכרתי 11 פעם במצרים. הרבה מהפעמים האלה היו פגישות גם עם חוסני מובארק. וחוסני מובארק בדרך כלל, היום כבר פחות, כי הוא לא כל כך בריא ולא כל כך עושה את זה, אבל בשנים הראשונות כשהיינו מגיעים עם ראש הממשלה, עם שר הביטחון, עם אחרים, הוא היה לוקח את העיתונאים לאיזה חדר צדדי, יושב איתם, ומפתח שיחה מאוד מעניינת, אישית, חופשית. ואני זוכר את אחת מהפגישות האלה, היינו 5-6 עיתונאים, והוא האיץ את השיחה. מאיזושהי סיבה הוא האיץ את השיחה. ולקראת סוף השיחה, הוא קורא לי ואומר, אני רוצה שתיכנס אליי לחדר. ואני נכנס לחדר, הוא אומר לי, אני יודע מה אתה כותב, אני יודע מה דעתך, אני שומע אותך בפגישות, יש לי שאלה מיוחדת אליך. אתה יכול להסביר לי מה רוצה הרבי מלובביץ' ממני? נדהמתי. אמרתי לו, למה כבוד הנשיא מתכוון? הוא אומר, הוא מדבר נגד ההסכם איתנו, הוא רואה בנו איום שלא ייפסק גם לעתיד. למה הוא עושה את זה? מה יש לו נגדי? הסברתי לו את הגישה של הרבי. אמרתי לו, הרבי ישמח מאוד, אני משוכנע בכך שאם כבוד הנשיא יגיע לארצות הברית, אין לי שום ספק שהרבי ישמח גם להיפגש איתו, ולומר לו את הדברים האלה. אני יכול להסביר רק, וישבנו חצי שעה, והייתה שיחה מאוד מעניינת עם הנשיא מובארק, סביב הנושא של הרבי. מי הרבי? מה גישתו? קצת היסטוריה על חב"ד. מה העמדה? הייתה לו גם את השאלה שהישראלים רבים שאלו, אז למה הוא יושב בניו יורק? הבהרתי לו גם את זה. סיפרתי לו על פעילות חב"ד בעולם כולו. זה נכנס אליו לדעתי לראש, אני ראיתי את זה במקום אחד הרבה שנים אחרי זה. קרה כשהרבי אמר לעשות את הסיומים, הייתה תקופה כשהתחילו לעשות את הסיומים של הלימוד של הרמב"ם, אז המארגנים של זה בארץ החליטו שהם הולכים לעשות סיום של הרמב"ם בבית כנסת הרמב"ם בקהיר, בית הכנסת שבימים אלה מושלמת עבודת השחזור והשיקום שלו בצורה יפה מאוד, וחב"ד החליטו לעשות שם את הסיום של הרמב"ם בבית חב"ד, אבל היה חשש בשל השם שיש לחב"ד והדברים שהרבי אמר על מצרים שלא ייתנו להם. שאלו אותי, אתה יכול לדבר עם מישהו? אמרתי, תנו לי, אני אחזור אליכם. דיברתי אז עם השגריר המצרי בישראל, אמרתי לו, חסידי חב"ד רוצים לעשות. אז הוא אמר, מה הם ידברו שם? הפחד היה מה ידברו. אמרתי לו, הם רוצים לעשות סיום של הרמב"ם, זה לימוד, הרמב"ם היה חי במצרים. הוא אומר, על הרמב"ם אתה לא צריך לספר לי, אני יודע רבות על הרמב"ם, אני גר בקהיר, אני מכיר את הרחוב שבו נמצא הבית, ליד השוק הכי מפורסם במצרים, חאן אל-חלילי. מה הם רוצים לעשות? אני אעביר את הבקשה. אמרתי לו, אני לא יודע עם מי אתה הולך לדבר. יש לי בקשה. אם זה יכול לעלות עד לדרג הבכיר ביותר אצלכם, לנשיא, תעלה את זה. לי אין ספק שהנשיא שלכם יאשר את זאת. הוא הבטיח. אני לא יודע עד היום אם הוא דיבר עם הנשיא או לא דיבר עם הנשיא. אחרי יומיים הוא חזר ואמר, דיברתי עם החלונות הבכירים ביותר, אין שום בעיה לחסידי חב"ד לבוא ולעשות את הסיום, והסיום מתקיים, וטיפלו יפה בחסידי חב"ד, וזה רק מראה שדברים ניטעו שם, שגם במצרים וגם במקומות אחרים, המעמד של הרבה היה מעמד איתן, התחשבו בדעתו. הרוחב הגיע למצרים, הגיע לארצות ערביות אחרות, הגיע למקומות אחרים.
That's an interesting. That Mubarak in his discussions is like, what does the Rebbe have against him? You know, and then he approved, or assumingly he approved them to do a celebration in Cairo. Okay, so as is the custom, so let's go through briefly, to wrap up the last 5 minutes of the class. What is the 14 books in the, we're not going to go through all 83 sections, but he divided those 83 sections into 14 books. We're going to go through what the 14 books are, and then we're going to do, as is customary by Yasinum, to do the last law in the book, and then start with the first law in the book. So the last law, so the first book is called the Book of Knowledge. And this is the book that tells you the basic principles of know that there's a God, love him, fear him, don't worship idols, and repentance. That's the basics. Then there's the Book of Love, which speaks about certain very ritualistic Jewish mitzvah, like prayer, and it's called prayer and tefillin and mezuzot and writing a Torah scroll, things like that. Then we go to book number 3. It's called the Book of Times. It's seasonal mitzvahs. That means Shabbat, festivals. That's found in book number 3. Book number 4 is the Book of Women. You want to get married, divorced, all those laws, that's in book number 4. Book number 5 is called the Book of Holiness and speaks about mainly which foods and which relationships are forbidden. Book number 6 is the Book of Promises. If you make certain oaths, you have to keep it, and there's a lot of pages on keeping your vows. Book number 7 is the Book of Seeds related to agriculture laws. Book number 8 is the Book of Service. This is the daily performance in the Holy Temple, how it was done and how to do it when Mashiach will come. Book number 9 is the Book of Sacrifices, the different sacrifices, how to do it. Book number 10 is the Book of Ritual Purity, how do you become impure and how do you purify yourself afterwards. Book number 11 is laws pertaining to torts, Book of Injuries. So if someone hurt you monetarily or physically, how do you collect on that, and what do you collect for? Book number 12 is a book of acquisition. This is not damage, but it's civil, also civil law. How do you buy things? How do you acquire things? How do you get things? That's book 12. Book 13 is the book of judgments. This is other kind of torts that, partners disagree on matters, laws of inheritance. That shows up in book number 13. And finally, book 14 is a book for the judges. How to run a court, how to accept, what kind of witnesses you can accept. And at the end of book number 14, it deals with the laws of kings. And the final king of the Jewish people will be Mashiach. So the last two chapters deal with who could be Mashiach. So it focuses on the legal aspects of Mashiach's arrival, what makes a Mashiach qualified, what's his job description. How do you know if he's meeting his job description? So that's how it goes through. And we'll start to see it by doing the last law of speaking about Mashiach. So the last law in Mishnah Torah concludes with Mashiach. It says, in the era of Mashiach, this is text 9, in the era of Mashiach, there will be neither famine nor war, neither envy nor rivalry, because what's good will flow in abundance, and all the delights will be freely available as dust. The occupation of the entire world will solely be to know God. Therefore, the Jews will be great sages and know the hidden matters, grasping the knowledge of the Creator according to the full extent of human potential. As it says, the world will be filled with the knowledge of God as the waters cover the ocean bed. And that's what we're going to be busy focused on. We're not going to need food. We're not going to need transport. Everything's going to be taken care of. We're going to be focused not on survival, but on getting to know God. That's the future of Mashiach. So it ends off with knowledge, which is funny because the book of Maimonides also starts off with knowledge. He was very precise. If you notice 1,000 chapters, for a reason. I want to point out something interesting that's relevant to pandemic times. The Rebbe once said he wrote 83 sections. Why 83? He couldn't make it 82, 88. It's random. The Rebbe says, knowing Maimonides, the Rebbe says, I guarantee you it's not random. It's definitely intentional. Maimonides was a physician. According to the Talmud, all illnesses are grouped into 83 illnesses. There's maybe thousands of diagnoses, but they're all really just 83. And so Maimonides, as a physician, also made his masterwork on the Torah law. So you study these 83 sections, and that's your spiritual medicine book. So this was a spiritual medicine book. And the Rebbe says, so studying this also brings healing, physical healing as well. The opening of, and that's on the United Nations, they have on the wall of Isaiah, they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nations shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. And Maimonides quotes, that's at the end of the Mishnah Torah. That's what it will be like when Mashiach comes. No more war. Do we imagine that? That would be amazing. And the introduction. Here's the introductory law. This is how it starts off. This is text 11. The foundation of all foundations and the pillar of wisdom is to know that there is a primary being who brings all of existence into being. All the beings of the heavens, the earth, and what is between them came into existence only from the truth of this being. Okay? Now look at the opening words. You see these opening words, the foundation of all foundations and the pillar of wisdom? In Hebrew, it's these 4 words. You say it how you say this, the foundation of all foundations, the Amud HaChachmas, and the pillar of wisdom. Look how precise Maimonides was. The first 4 words, the letters, the opening letters is Hashem's name. The Yud, the Hey, the Vav, and the Hey. Right? That's the first 4 words of this work. And let's just go to examine the fundamental mitzvah. He says the first mitzvah is to know that there is a being who brings all of existence into being. In other words, First of all, not who brought the world into being at the Big Bang or 5,780 years ago. But God is constantly recreating the world. This is important to know. Number two, you have to know about God. It's not enough to believe in God. You have to actually comprehend God and meditate on God and try to understand Him. But can you understand an infinite God? Of course not. So that's why there's a second mitzvah of faith. But there's still mitzvah number one is mitzvah to know God, to get to explore God and study God and think about what does He do? What does He do all day? Why did He create this world? And how do I serve Him? What is He all about? And that's Mishnah number one. Thank you all for joining us on this beautiful journey of studying about Maimonides. Oh, let's end off practical. Let's say someone wants to join this trek. So here's some resources. If you're interested in the Sefer HaMitzvah, that means learning the short mitzvahs every day. So first of all, I could share with you someone on YouTube. Every day for 1 minute, he does the mitzvahs of the day for 1 minute. So you sign up to his playlist. I'm going to share it out in a follow-up link, whoever was joined us today and whoever's present, or a text message. 1 minute YouTube video, or if you like WhatsApp, they can send it to you on WhatsApp. Number two is you can buy a book called Sefer HaMitzvah in English. There's also a free app in the Google Play and Apple Store called the Chabad.org Daily Mitzvah app, where it's there in English, and it's done by day. Every day you open it up, it's on the right day, it tells you the mitzvah, and you can also find it online at Chabad.org in the daily study section. Here's some links, but I doubt you can write it down so fast, but it's in the print. You can find it. Number two, if you do 1 chapter per day, there's a print magazine that you could order called Chayenu, where they send you every week. It has much more other weekly study cycles, but one of the things they include in there is Maimonides, 1 chapter a day. You could also download either the Chayenu has an app version, or you could download Chabad.org, has a daily Torah study version, where you can find it there to study 1 chapter a day, or you can go online. And online, they also have videos, tons of videos. Chabad.org has daily videos from numerous. You could pick and choose who you like, and that's it. Or you could do 3 chapters, whatever you like.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Pleasure.
Thank
you
you,
for
Rabbi.
joining, everyone.
Very
Thank you,
good, Rabbi. Thank you.
Is this PowerPoint
you.
available? Can
I
you
can
send us
share
this
with you.
PowerPoint that you worked on?
I'll share it as a PDF.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, be well.
Good to see everybody. Take care.
Good to see you, Bruce.
Yeah.
Take care.
Good night.
Okay. Good night.